Okay, welcome. My name's Nick Rocky. I'm facilitating this next session on a shared mission with corporate partners to advance equity and transformation. I'm going to introduce the session and then just introduce the panelists. So the panel role is to unpack the role and value of partnerships and really look at how more can be achieved through a shared vision. So partnerships, from our perspective, exists in all forms, sizes and shapes, from relatively simple partnerships between two entities where there's maybe a transactional relationship between partners, to more complex collaborative relationships where there are multiple partners, each with their own agendas, with the common vision, which are more
the panelists. My name is Cyril and I'm responsible for corporate social investment at the IDC. Our relationship or partnership with Adopted School Foundation goes back to 2011 when we were looking for a partner for our schools program. It was at the time when government Department of Economic Development had just launched the new growth path, which aimed to create 5 million jobs by 2020. And they went to NEDLAC to engage with social partners about a partnership from various stakeholders in education. They specifically looked at how to improve the quality of education, looking at specifically the whole school development program. So we did our own research because we wanted to contribute to addressing the challenges of education in our country. So we did our research and found out that Adopted School Foundation was actually implementing a whole school development. So we went with a model where we actually wanted to adopt schools in impoverished areas and actually work with those schools over a number of years. So that's how our partnership came into being. And it was initially, we adopted 20 secondary schools, but obviously as you know, the implementation was, we were implementing, you know, based on what we were seeing in the field, we decided to add primary schools to our program to support some of our secondary schools. So we worked specifically with feeder schools, feeder primary schools to some of those secondary schools. So we ended up actually now with 30 schools in total that we were supporting. And initially, as I said, it was a 5-year a partnership which started in 2012, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, we couldn't meet all the obligations that we had made to those schools. So we had to actually extend the relationship for another 3 years. And we are currently in our final year, which is the 8th year. Thank you.
Thanks, Tebogo. Thank you for that. Gabrielle, do you want to come in?
Sure, thanks, Nick, and good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. So in terms of introduction, my name is Gabrielle Haberton, and I'm joining you from the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation Endowment. Our connection and relationship with the Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation is in relation to Black Umbrellas. And so we've been enjoying a partnership along those lines. A little bit of context to that and how it came about is that the endowment is one of 3 associated but distinct entities, being ourselves as the endowment, E Squared Investments, and the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation. And in 2017, the endowment embarked on a journey, essentially initiating the 10KJ initiative, which stands for 10,000 jobs or income generating opportunities. And through that process, we were looking for, and so we've been working with them since 2018 was when the partnership formally commenced, and so we are nearing the end of year 3 of that relationship.
Fantastic. Okay, do you want to give a little intro and perspective as well? Well done on time, people. You muted, Naka?
I'm sorry. Thanks, Nick. My name is Naka Hlagala from Pembani Group. Pembani has a long history with CRF from 2004, if you can do the historical trace, but and the history in between. Nevertheless, for the purpose of this panel, Chair, allow me to only focus selectively on the relationship that we had just renewed recently with the CRF for a period of 5 years. We are on the 2nd year now, and our focus is selectively on credit and on the bursary funding. This is where we are as Pembani with CRF, despite the long history. I'm not sure if we should then zoom into the discussion. Thanks.
I think let's do that. We don't have a lot of time for questions, so let's start asking some questions. And I'm going to ask the same first question to each of you. I know there is a question from Kerry, but I'm just going to take the privilege of being the chair just to ask 1 or 2 questions briefly myself. What I'd like to ask each of you just to reflect on is what has been the key lessons and learnings out of your relationship with the foundation, and what is unique about the foundation that has really stood out for you in terms of your work with them, in terms of the work they've done with you, just any reflections or insights that you've got out of your experience and time with the foundation. Tebogo, let's start with you and just talk, if you don't mind, just your mic was very, your sound was very low last time, so just talk up into the microphone if you don't mind.
Can you hear me now clearly?
Yes.
Yes, that's we can hear you.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay. I think from our side, what has been the key learnings is that, you know, there is no I in a partnership, that, you know, each partner must be willing to compromise. Each partner needs to demonstrate flexibility and ability to compromise on certain issues, and that there might be some when you go into a partnership, there are some expectations, and be aware that those expectations might change, and that's where I say, it allows, if you are flexible and are willing to compromise, you don't go there, say, with being rigid. And also for us, one of the things was also to say, in your planning, you must also have realistic time frames. As I said in my introduction, when we went about this partnership, we said this was going to be a 5-year partnership, but there are other things that we didn't factor in, that we might meet challenges. And that's why when we presented to our EXCO and when the program was approved, it was based on that 5-year period, and this is the amount of money that's allocated to the program. But as we were implementing the program, there were challenges, things like, the approval. I think we didn't factor in things like your approval process, how long it will take from the department point of view. So we ended up towards the end of 5 years, we still had obligations that we made to the schools, because when we started the program, each school, we signed a 5-year agreement with them with clear commitments and obligations also from our side. So 5 years, towards the end of 5 years, we could see that we were not going to meet those obligations. But luckily, because of, I think in terms of our leadership, there was commitment to the program, and they were able to say, we went back, with the foundation, sat down and said, what, here are the obligations that we still have to meet. What are now the realistic time frames, given now what we know? And we were able to, extend the program. And even with the funding that was allocated, I think it was not a realistic, I think it was just, we didn't factor a lot of things into consideration. But luckily for us, our EXCO then did say, they were able to allocate more funds to enable us to complete the work that we have. And also, I think one of the things is that one of the learnings, and one which has been a challenge, is that you must also plan for your exit. I think we didn't really plan that much for an exit, because we are now at the time where this is the final year, but we can see that some of the schools are not yet ready for us exiting. So that poses another challenge to say, how are we going to, to address that situation? Because we feel that such programs cannot perpetually continue. At some point, you definitely need an exit. And if you look at some of those schools, yes, we think that they are at the level where a majority of them no longer need our support. But the challenge is, if we leave, we are not sure that they will be able to sustain the program. So maybe I'll just end there.
Thanks very much for those insights, Tebogo. Gabrielle, anything that stands out for you in terms of uniqueness, key lessons, and let's keep it to a minute or two, just so we can get through everyone and maybe ask one or two other questions. Thanks, guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, there are, of course, many, many lessons, so I will pick some standout highlight ones to keep it brief. I think something that certainly stands out for me at the outset is that it's really an assumption that we had starting out that was around the importance of tried and tested models, but also tried and tested teams and organizations. And we have, just through our partnership with Black Umbrellas, we've had that really reinforced for us in terms of the importance of that. And so that's been something that we've found incredibly beneficial time and again through the partnership. I think off the back of that is something where there's almost inherent risk with tried and tested organizations. With maturity can come organizations can become less flexible as they become mature. And so I think something else that has stood out for me in our relationship with Black Umbrellas is also that they have maintained that flexibility and agility. Just before coming into this breakout session, we heard Mark talking about how they've been thinking about diversification of their funding streams. And so there's just this continuous drive to be adapting and learning. We've seen it recently through COVID as well, which has been just unprecedented times, and how the organization has also very quickly adapted to this new environment, been really taking opportunities to adapt their model, looking at virtual. We also heard in the presentation, one of the things I think was about, rural areas, etc. And, we can see that in terms of a desire to move into online spaces where you can reach more people, etc. So all of that, I think, has been just so great to see that tension of being a really established organization, but still maintaining that learning drive and inherent DNA, which I think has been so important and valuable for us. So I think I'll stop with those two.
Super. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Naka, do you want to come through and just share a couple of perspectives from your side?
Perhaps a key lesson, what I have learned throughout the partnership is that most of the time as corporates, we do not have enough time to focus on CSI. Or sometimes when we do have got that time, we lack the expertise, the touch, and that specific intelligence to deal with beneficiaries in their constituencies. This is what I have learned. And what stood out for me is that when looking at it from outside, CSI can easily deceive you to think that it is more about money. But once you are in, like my fellow panelists are commenting, you start to realize that it's not about money. It is about a value add. It's about difference making. It's about shared vision and also unlocking possibilities. And you realize that at times that doesn't take the time frames that we normally like to use in business, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, but it gives you its own learnings. Its momentum actually is the one that we need to follow, even though often it does happen, funders like to dictate terms, but we are learning that in actual fact we should follow in as much as we are funders. And also what stood out for me is the team that I am interacting with often at CRF and the entire staff, that you find a dedicated and caring individuals who are also continuously exploring new ways and learning from the beneficiaries themselves. You come and say, but we did not agree about this. And then they will say, oh, stop it. In actual fact, the beneficiaries had an alternative view and we had to incorporate it. Can you please understand? Thanks.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to just take a question from Kerry Francis, but before I do, I'm going to just ask a final question from myself that you can close on. So if you can hear Kerry's question and respond to the extent that you can to that and to a question that I'm going to ask, and it's a very simple, short question, is what would you do going forward to strengthen your relationship with and your partnership with the Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation. Anything that you would like to see different going forward? Partnerships are different, not always easy to maintain. They're dynamic, and so I'm not asking you about the challenges necessarily, but how would you like to see things evolve in the future? And then if Kerry can be unmuted, and maybe I can unmute her from here. Kerry, if you want to just come in and ask an additional question, and then we'll go through the same order and just get a last closing comment from everyone. Literally a minute each. Kerry? You're muted.
Okay. Sorry, hold on.
Okay. I'm not sure the technology's playing ball here. So there is obviously an opportunity as well in the closing session to ask questions. So if we don't get to Kerry's question now, we can get back to it later on. But just quickly to go through a quick comment, and let's reverse the order. Yeah, Naka, anything that you would like to see different going forward for your relationship or your partnership with the CRF?
Okay, thanks, Nick. I had already made a comment to the team that I'm working with, and some of the comments I can see they are reflecting in the report that Yvonne has already presented. But in actual fact is to say things are changing. Not so much good in the corporate space. And it is time also for CRF to come and play ball. In which way? To understand the challenges that we are dealing with in our different sectors and present a revised model that actually taking cognizance, and also it is appealing to what we are dealing with at the current moment. Like, for example, I saw they did mention social and labor plans in the mines. They did mention the BEE and its complexities, something that they need to strengthen so that we'll be able to work together. Whatever cent that we are putting into the CSI is not just a feel-good exercise, but rather it is also benefiting the organization one way or the other in terms of its deliverables. Thanks.
That's a great comment. Thank you very much. Gabrielle?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that stands out is that our primary relationship, of course, has been with Black Umbrellas. And so I think one of the things that could be interesting that stands out to me is the opportunity to also strengthen the relationship and learn a little bit more about CRF as well, and how our respective roles could potentially enhance each other. And then I think the other thing is also just recognizing the learning journey that we are on as the endowment as well. So I think, and Mark, I know we've had this discussion recently, but one of the things that we've been aware of is not so much how we want the partnership to be different necessarily in the future, but is also we've been keen to hear what our partners actually would really value in terms of how our partnership could look different in the future. And I think speaking to that point about how do we go beyond the funding side, how do we better support each other, and really leverage the different types of assets that we respectively have at our disposal to strengthen each other.
Super, thank you very much. And Tebogo, a closing comment from you?
Yeah, I think from my side, it's also maybe to expand on what Naka has said, is to, find innovative ways of doing things. For instance, our relationship with them, it's mainly with Adopted School, and most of the funding goes towards infrastructure development in schools. And we would like to see new innovations in terms of renewable energy in schools, not just reliance on electricity, explore those other things in line with government policy, and also, explore green buildings. It has been a challenge uncovered with the schools that we are being involved in, not having things like electricity for them to have, like for instance, internet connectivity. Whilst as a company, we were ready to say, we can offer, we can assist with digital education, but the infrastructure in those schools was not there for them to actually, continue with lessons. And also, I think also the relationship has largely been, yes, we provide funding, and they are our implementing partner. But to say maybe even from ourselves as the IDC, we didn't leverage on some of the other resources that we have beyond funding that can actually assist in terms of the sustainability of the organization as well. Thank you.
That, I think, concludes the timing. We're slightly over. So I think the plan now is to actually leave the session and then go back to the original session. Then we'll have a quick summary of what came out of this. I'll try and do my best to represent what was said, and there'll be an opportunity for further Q&A. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you to other participants.